Welcome to Unlearn the Crap TV with your host, Kathy Baldwin. Unlearn the Crap TV is more than just a show. It's a movement towards breaking free from the disempowering structures designed to benefit the few at the expense of the many. It's about education, healing, and unlearning the detrimental beliefs that have been ingrained in society for generations. So now, please welcome the host of Unlearn the Crap TV, Kathy Baldwin.
Welcome to another episode of Unlearn the Crap TV. Today's topic is unlearning conformity, unlearning being normal, unlearning trying to fit in. It is time that we realized that snowflakes are not the only thing that are unique and individual. Each and every one of us is unique and individual in our own right. And we have our own gifts and we have our own purpose and we have our own message. And when we try to squeeze into a box that somebody else created for us, it makes us sick. It takes us out of alignment. It makes us disempowered. And it cuts off our voice. It cuts off our power. It cuts us away from who we naturally are. And then trying to squeeze into the box becomes a spiral that is unbelievably hard to break. And so, this whole idea that we are supposed to conform to society instead of society being enriched by who we are and what we bring to it is something I really want us to unlearn. Me personally, when I tried to fit into the shoulds of what I should be, what was expected of me, it took me down. I apologize for the drop in our connection before. I don't know if there's a sunspot that's out or it's the full moon, but somehow my internet keeps popping out. So today's topic, as I was saying, is about unlearning conformity. And I am so thrilled to introduce you to my guest today. I'd like to introduce you to Sapha Pardo Heckman. Sapha, could you please join us?
Happy to. Hello.
Well, if the gods want to pop me out, I'm just going to give you permission because I know you have an incredibly powerful voice. when when you and I met as part of the Women Thrive Summit that we're both going to be on next March, I was immediately drawn to your message and your passion. The thing that you talk about when you talk about being in feminine embodiment, and what do you call that? I want you to say it. That's why I'm not trying to say it.
Mindful self-seduction and personal sovereignty.
Yes, yes. You cannot be in self seduction and be conformed.
Correct. Not at all. Not at all.
Could you explain your thought process between, because nobody's ever heard of self seduction?
No, I know. Okay, so I will enter the conversation this way real quick. I will just let you know a little bit about me. So, my name is Sapha. I'm a feminine embodiment and empowerment mentor. I firmly believe in your power, meaning I believe that every single woman in this planet is powerful and is worthy and is valuable. And I think that this is a lesson that we don't get taught too often. And somewhere in the back of our minds, in our subconscious, this starts becoming a pattern that reoccurs in our lives, and it starts showing up in very unique ways. As it relates to this particular topic, I just love that we're talking about this today because I've been having several conversations around this. So I just love when everything aligns. So, as it relates to this particular topic, one of the reasons why we find it, not that we find it easy, but why we lean so heavily into the idea of conformity, why it feels so familiar to us, and why it gives us a sense of protection, so to speak, is because what it allows us to do is it allows us to put the onus of our self importance on something and someone outside of ourselves. So that is the level of, and so when I say those things, if you're thinking, well, gosh, self important, I'm not self important, that is exactly the realm that I talk about when I speak to self seduction. So, mindful self seduction is a process that I've basically coined. It's my own way of working with people. And what it does and how it works, it's this venue for self connection and self reclamation that goes a little bit deeper than and a little bit beyond the idea of self acceptance. I don't believe there's anything wrong with accepting. However, I'm someone who feels into my body very deeply and into just how my soul responds to certain things. And growing up, especially as someone who grew up basically despising who she was, and I'll tell you the whole story about that later if you want to, but basically did not know who I was, didn't like her, didn't understand her. So, as someone who grew up in that way, when I very first started dipping my toe in the realm of self love, one of the very first things that I was taught to do was to pick a part of my body and say, for example, if I jiggled my arms and I didn't like the jiggle of the arms, they were like, well, yeah, but look at your arms this way. Look at your arms and think that you love them because they're strong and they're capable of holding people and embracing them. And I understand where that comes from. And I think it's a beautiful way of helping us better understand how to connect to our bodies. And because I'm someone who searches depth so much in every aspect of my life, I've always been this way, will always be this way. One of the things that I recognized was that felt a lot like putting up with to me. It felt a lot like, oh, well, I know you can't really love yourself, but if we're going to try to force yourself to love yourself, then let's at the very least give this part of your body or this reason for being to why you are going to put up with yourself. You may not really love yourself, but you know what? At least you have legs that can walk. And it felt like a very conditional kind of love. And for me, if I'm going to be loved, I want to be unconditionally loved, especially by myself. That is the most important aspect of self love possible. And self seduction is the process through which we get to know the self in a very real way by asking questions, by getting curious, by allowing ourselves to take up space in this world in a very real way so that we can break the patterns that keep us from that self expression, that self awareness, that self love, that self beingness. And within that realm, that is where we learn and we know the importance of being who we are rather than finding and leaning that conformity. So, in a nutshell, and that's very much abbreviated, self seduction really comes down to our ability to learn to fall in love with ourselves. And there is, of course, ways in which we do this, but that is the overall look.
I love that. I love the fact that I talk about universal laws, and so your self acceptance, your self seduction, is to me the same as the law of polarity, the law of gender, the law of cause and effect, and that we have all of it, and we can't cherry pick the things that we want and the things that we like and then try to disconnect from the things that we don't, because that's judgment, that's conditional, what you're talking about, and it is not about holistic. So I want to change the idea of how do you accept this when you come to this world with trauma, and we all do. We all are
Yep.
traumatized. It's the way our brains are wired. So, how do we come to the place where our brain has taught us we're not good enough? We don't belong. We don't fit.
Right. So for me, like I said, I'm someone who loves to go deeper. And one of the first things that I would say to get us curious about this process is let's start looking at the world of self acceptance as something that we can deepen into self embracing. There's such a beautiful distinction to me between the idea of I'm going to accept this part of myself because, well, and insert the as long as kind of statement or because of whatever. And there's a difference between that and I'm going to embrace every part of who I am because I am worthy, because I am valuable, because I am incredible. And it's fine that I am flawed and that I am not perfect and that there are things within me that can still grow and develop and evolve. And there are things within me that I personally judge very harshly that don't need to be judged so harshly and that are a part of the equation. And much like you said, I firmly believe that realm of duality is beautiful for us to reside in because it allows us to be with everything all at once. I actually grew up as an actor. I acted for a very long time. And one of the things that I am grateful for that realm is that it really taught me the art of yes and. So when you do improv, they teach you this thing. You don't, if you're improving when someone and they tell you, here you go, this is a sardine, you're going to wear it as a hat. You don't go, no. You go, yes, and it's a beautiful hat. And I love it so much. And so you keep adding in. So in life, it's a very similar dynamic. We want to look at the self as a whole being. We are not broken. We are not fractured. We are not shattered. We are not less than. There are parts inside of us that need love and attention and tenderness that are very different from the parts of ourselves that need that love and attention and tenderness in a very different tone. It's almost like if you're looking at everything on a musical scale, some scales are going to be in a different range than others, and that's beautiful. And so I personally also love dealing with the subconscious. And so when we look at the subconscious self, which is what drives us 99% of the time, we understand that the shadow aspects of the self, what we call the shadow aspects, are the things that we judge most harshly about ourselves within ourselves, the ones that we either get very triggered by and are very quick to judge, or the ones that we don't want people to know about, or the ones that we are like, oh, this is so terrible about me. This makes me a terrible person. I hate myself because of it. Instead of looking at them that way, we look at them with embracing, we look at them with love, we look at them as, okay, this is great. Tell me the story about this. Tell me where this sense of less than comes from. Tell me where this sense of selfishness comes from. Tell me where this sense of whatever it is that we might be judging, where does this come from? Tell me the story about that. Let's have a conversation, self-seduce. And then through that process, we learn how to expand. There are things, like I said, that are going to need that calibration, that are going to need that transmutation. And there are things that no, they just need to be understood better. And that's all you really needed to do from the get-go. And so when it comes to this dynamic, when it comes to this conversation, the process of self-love becomes one of yes and, as in I can hold all of the vastness of the amazing universe within me and be imperfect. I can hold the beautiful, easy, happy-go-lucky parts of life and the ones that feel sharp, the ones that challenge me. I can hold the parts of me that I've really enjoyed and taking pleasure in for so long, and I can look at the ones that I've been hiding from or the ones that I didn't even know that exist that were there and bring them and make them a cohesive part of self. You get to be all of the things at the same time. And I think that that is a very powerful conversation. And again, to move it back into this place of, changing the narrative around the boxes that we have to fit into. If you fully understand who you truly are, and I mean it deeply, like if you really understand every little bit of who you are, and it's a process, by the way, it's not something that happens overnight. And I also believe it's something that changes every day. So every day you get to know a different version of yourself. And so if you're understanding those parts of yourself, then when someone comes along and tells you, you need to box yourself in this way because I said so, you're going to be like, no. And it's going to be okay. You're not going to have like this anxiety that, okay, but I have to perform because they said, and if I don't, then that means I'm not good enough. And that means I'm not worthy enough. And I think a lot of the times this is such a unique wounding pairing that we tend to carry within us. We tend to carry this idea that we're not good enough and at the same time too much, especially as women. And I'm going to put this in the realm of the feminine for a moment. Number one, because I work mostly with women, but number two, because one of the ways in which we see this reflected is in the world around us has been very good about trying to cage us. I was just writing a whole email about this, and this went out in my newsletter yesterday. It's how, for example, someone called me high maintenance a couple of weeks ago, and I remember laughing and also internally getting very irate, not for my sake, not because my ego was hurt, but because I know that these are words that get weaponized against women the world over in order to try to keep us small and tiny and insignificant. And in this box that says you you should be the good girl, the one that sits there and just, oh, is so compliant and so dainty and so happy all the time, and you're just smiling and all of these things that go along with that. And it's like, no, we don't do that anymore. We don't play that game, because if you're going to say that I'm high maintenance because I have standards, because I show up for myself from a place of power, because I don't settle, because I don't put up with less than, because I know how good I am in terms of how worthy I am, not attaching it to as long as statement, then hell yeah, call me high maintenance. I'll be high maintenance all day long. And that's where we really want to reside when it comes to those boxes. Now, of course, this is so vast because then it goes into many different areas of our lives. And as entrepreneurs, we know this. Like, there's so many different little boxes that we tend to see ourselves into. And there's such power and such worth and such beauty and such relishing in not doing that and just being the self. And you are going to be for who you are going to be for. And that is it. And you also don't necessarily need to be loved and adored by everybody. You also don't need to be understood and seen exactly as you are by everybody. That was one of the hardest lessons for me to learn in my life, is that if you're going to misunderstand me and you're bound and like determined to misunderstand me, go ahead. Misunderstand me. I'm fine with that.
Wow. As you were talking, I was thinking about the fact that I'm on a cleanse because I've done my emotional healing, I've done my intellectual, I've gotten myself off of the medications and everything, and I'm in a really great place. But the body still remembers. And so while I was trying to live my best life and bring the best that I can to my clients and everyone that I give my energy to, I realized that my body was still carrying all of this trapped trauma. And so I'm thinking about all the women who are thinking, yeah, but I'm my body, I'm not healthy. I'm not strong. I'm not as beautiful as I used to be. I can't wear a bikini, or I can't do this, or these traumas have happened. And they're looking at you, Sapha, and they're probably saying, wow, she's got it all together. And so I know you have a before story. Could you help those people understand that it is layers that we peel off as we're doing our healing journey, as we're coming to this place of seduction? It's like when we're dating another human being, we're not jumping into marriage and we're not expecting them to be perfect. We're accepting that, okay, 80% is what I want in my life. 20%, well, we're just gonna have to accept that part.
Yeah, completely. No, I love that you're bringing this up. So, okay, a couple of things. One, just for everyone who's listening to this, I want you to know that it's everything that you've experienced, your body has experienced with you in real time. And unlike your mind, your body continues to experience things as if they were happening right this very moment. So it's normal. And there are ways to heal. And it's possible to move beyond that trapped trauma, that trapped emotion, the things that are stuck at your very cellular slash DNA level. I promise you it's possible. I promise you it's doable. Yes, it takes some commitment. It takes you wanting to become devoted to yourself. It takes you looking at yourself exactly as you are in this moment right now and going, okay, yeah, maybe the pants don't fit. Maybe the scale won't budge. Maybe my eyes are like black and blue underneath, or maybe whatever it is. And I still choose me. And where I know that there is some stuck emotion, where I feel that there is a heaviness, I'm going to go explore there. That's the process of self-seduction. And like you're saying, like when you're dating, you're not, well, okay, depending on how romantic your brain tends to be, right? But generally speaking, we don't just go out and meet the first person we see and we're like, I want to marry this person, right? And we want to think about ourselves in that way too. We want to think about the excitement of getting to know ourselves. Oh, okay, I found something new about myself. Today I discovered that I have a very low tolerance for this and this. Okay, that's cool. So now tell me, right? Me, answer this question for me. How do you feel about this and this? Because that's what happens to me. It's so funny when I talk about the process of self-seduction. I think a lot of times we get stuck in the idea of like a striptease and like the, like these very like sensual things. And while I think that those are valid and they're a part of it, for me, it makes me laugh. I'm like, bring it down smaller. Think about the very first stages of seduction, which are like that flirty touch, that flirty look, the, hey, tell me more about yourself. Do you like the color blue? Why do you like the color blue? It sounds so silly, but it's part of the courtship. So you're dating yourself, you're courting yourself, and that's what that encompasses. And I just say that to give people hope. As for me, I said earlier, I really did not like myself. As a matter of fact, I hated myself. And gosh, listen, I grew up in a household that experienced a whole lot of love and a whole lot of dysfunction. And I wasn't always safe. And I didn't understand what safety meant when I was young. And I also felt while I was growing up like I was the too much kid. I don't know if you've ever seen Anne of Green Gables or if you've read the book or whatever, but I felt very much like her. I felt like that was the kid that everybody was like, ugh, this kid with her dreams and why is she so out there and why blah, blah, blah. And I just felt like I didn't have a place where I fit in this world. So generally speaking, I didn't feel safe. I didn't feel like I fit in. I felt very rejected and I felt very dejected. And what started to happen was parts of me started choosing to put on a show, started choosing to choose who I was going to be depending on who I was around. Like if I knew that the popular girls did something, then I was trying really hard to do that thing. And I was like working over time to try to be like them. And then I started noticing that a lot of times, at least in school, what seemed to drive a lot of the bullying around me was my weight. And then I started hyper focusing on that. And so to me, my entire world revolved around how tiny I could get. And because I just so happened to have gotten very ill when I was little and I had like all 3 types of salmonella, I ended up in the hospital. It was actually a really dangerous thing. Once I did that, I lost a ton of weight and everybody was nice to me. And then I realized, oh, I just have to be small. I have to be small in order to fit into this world. So I developed a very serious eating disorder, meaning I did not like myself at all. I actually was contentious with my body. And that's where things started. And so again, if you feel like you're the kind of person who's like, nah, I can never get to love myself, I completely understand, completely get where you're coming from.
Absolutely. Thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing that. It is so important that we get those messages and really have someone who can guide us through unpacking them. Because you're right, those things that come into our brains when we're younger, our brain interprets what that means. And that meaning is not necessarily true. And even if it's true, it's not empowering. And so we are going to come back and we're going to have a conversation even deeper about this when we come back from commercial. So this is a perfect time for you to like, subscribe, comment, join us in this conversation. We'll be right back after this break.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick, Wednesdays 7 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave Media Network and TuneIn Radio. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to easy easysense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's easysense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
So we're going to continue our conversation on unlearning conformity and how that translates into being able to seduce ourselves, love ourselves, accept ourselves. And so you were talking about your childhood, and I was thinking about mine because I had many, many traumas before the age of 12. And the message came through, I definitely wasn't safe. I mean, I was literally attacked. I came into this world feeling unaccepted and unwanted. And that message was definitely not by my parents, but by the extended family. It came through loud and clear that, I wasn't purebred and I wasn't accepted. And so that left me yearning for acceptance from outside of myself. I never ever got the message that to go inward. It was always about, I'll give you an example. My mother was, and I talk about my mother all the time because she was a major influence in my life. But she was the most fantastic hostess you've ever seen in your life. Things could be chaos, but she could whip up a 5-course meal, make it look like there was a whole staff taking care of it. And her rules were, Kathy, never let anyone finish eating last because you don't want your guests to be uncomfortable, and their comfort, their enjoyment of the moment is way more important. So I learned to keep eating. So that everybody around me wouldn't be uncomfortable that I finished before them. And that trained my mind and my body to eat past full. It trained me not to understand my own internal signals because I was too busy monitoring everybody else's signals. What were they doing and how was I supposed to respond? And how do I make sure that they are good and they are happy? And it was so ingrained in me. It sounds like you had some sort of similar thing happening to you as well.
Yeah, somewhat. Okay, so gosh, so I was someone, the way that I grew up, I moved around quite a lot. Some of it had to do with the fact that when I was born, we lived in Mexico City and my lungs were not able to breathe in all of the smog in the city. I mean, listen, I love Mexico City, but I mean, it's a lot. And so we ended up having to move somewhere else. That was my first move. And then it just seemed like we kept moving from place to place and like from house to house for a very long time. Actually, moving was sort of like something that I did so regularly. I didn't think that staying anywhere for more than a year was weird to me. So that was the first point of disconnect with safety for me because, well, I didn't really have like a home, whereas like I see people that grew up in the same house and they have like the tags of when they were growing up and how tall they were, but I've never had any of those things. And then I never felt safe with the family, the extended family around me, my brothers are amazing. My mom is amazing. I never felt comfortable or safe around my cousins, my uncles, my aunts. And that sounds so harsh to say, but I just didn't. And I was actually, so I try to be very careful with how I frame this because there are circumstances around it, which if we have time, we can touch a little bit into. But I was sexually molested by one of my cousins who was only 3 years older than me. And that's where that really interesting nuance comes in for me, because I know that they were so little that they were essentially very likely emulating something that was happening to them. And so I don't even harbor any kind of like ill feelings toward that. I don't. But I wasn't safe. When that happens at a very early age, and I was very little, I couldn't tell you. I want to say maybe like 3 or 4. When that kind of thing happens, you just disconnect from self. You disconnect from body because it's your body no longer feels the same either. It's no longer safe. So not safe at home, not safe in my environment, not safe with my family, not safe in my own body. And then add to that the complexities of being a child growing up and getting bullied because I was so weird and so different from everybody else, and getting bullied because I was so fat. By the way, I've seen pictures of myself recently, and be so for real here, people. Like, what the heck was wrong with you? But bullied for all of those things. And so what ended up happening is I learned to fit myself into people's molds, similar to what you experienced in terms of bypassing your own needs in terms of your satiety cues. And except what I ended up learning to do was I ended up bypassing my needs in order to make sure that everyone else around me was comfortable. I wanted to make sure that if someone was fighting at home, I was the one that was there to appease everybody. I wanted to make sure if there was someone in my classroom who wasn't happy, I was there to be the support. I wanted to make sure that if someone wasn't okay with the things that I was saying or doing, okay, then I would learn and I would watch someone else and see what they were doing. And maybe if that was more appropriate to whatever the environment was calling for, then I would emulate that. And so I started to disappear, essentially, like who I was started to be erased. A lot later on, also a lot of issues with, growing up with a narcissistic parent is not easy. And so growing up in an environment where there wasn't that extra safety as well. I mean, I listen, Kathy, I can tell you like safety, 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 safety all day long, right? And with that sense of disconnect too, part of that was, okay, so would being treated how is okay? You know what I mean? It got to the point where I started to understand that if I wasn't exactly treated great, I I saw that as normal. And especially when that came accompanied by moments of really great fun or really good caring for it. It was this really strange. Anyone who's ever been around a person who is just struggling with their own mental stuff will understand that. That is like there's very high highs and very low lows, and you don't know where you stand. And so I didn't know where I stood for a very long time. So my easy outlet was to try and control something. What I could control, especially at the time, and again, especially after I had already like lost all the weight, because like I went into that hospital post salmonella at a certain weight and I left skin and bones because everything had been drained out of me. It was awful. I could have died, but it was great because all of a sudden I came back to school and I was loved and I became popular and everybody wanted to be around me and everybody wanted to date me. And it was like, oh, so my mind creates this narrative. And it's like, okay, in order to be good enough, I have to be smaller. I have to be less this. I have to be more this. And it starts creating these frames of mind. And so the first point of contact is control, right? The illusion of control. If I can control the way that my body looks, if I can control the way that I speak, if I can control the way that I walk, if I can control all of these things, then everybody around me is going to perceive me a certain way. And then I'm going to finally be able to fit in somewhere. And then I'm going to finally be able to be like good enough. Except the thing about this is that I was never going to be good enough and I wasn't. And so I kept up with the eating disorder and with the patterns within toxic dynamics in my world for a very long time, to the point where past high school, and only a couple of years into college, I ended up marrying someone that was not right for me. And the relationship was hyper toxic. And then I stayed in that toxic relationship for 13 years in the middle of me trying to heal. So Oh, I think I also like to share that part to tell people, like, look, I know that sometimes it feels like healing has to happen right away, and it's just going to be like this massive thing that once you do it, that's it, you're done, you're happy, or woo, you're proud. And it's not quite that way. It's a process. It's a deliberate walk. You're walking up a spiral staircase. I always give one of my friends credit for this because that was her analogy. I'm saying you're not going round and round on a hamster wheel, you're going up a spiral staircase, and sometimes things just look a certain way. And so it took me going up the spiral staircase several years of peeling back the layers of the onion, like you said earlier. So peeling back each layer. Layer number 1, control. Layer number 2, eating disorder. Layer number 3, safety. Layer number 4, selfhood, who the heck I am. And then finally I got to the point where I was like, oh, okay, well, toxic relationships don't serve me either if I'm going around saying that I'm this goddess and I'm amazing. And this is before I started working with people one-on-one on that. At the time I was working on nutrition with them, as I really wanted to help people heal their relationship to food and self. And that's what I was doing. And at that time, things just didn't sit well anymore. I was like, man, if I'm like living in a household where I'm walking on eggshells, and I used to feel that way with my own body, I don't want to keep feeling that way. I started recognizing the things that were no longer okay. Makes sense? So it's like you start with compromising your things, your values, your integrity, your sense of selfhood, and things seem normal because you've been doing it for so long until it's no longer okay. And once you start spotting the things that are no longer acceptable, you're like, why would I keep doing this in other areas of my life? Which then, again, sort of to this concept of fitting yourself into a box, I fit myself into so many tiny little boxes that by the time I was dismantling them and saying, no, I deserve better, I don't want a box, I want the whole freaking world, and I want to take up as much space in this world as I can, and I'm going to, then by then things had changed enough that I could do that. And then by then I was able to recognize the things and be like, oh, no, not going to happen. And so the good thing about that is also, this is the other piece about healing. Healing is never just a perma thing. You don't do it once and then it's like permanently okay. You're going to have different points. Again, to go back to the spiral staircase idea. So if you're going up a spiral staircase and you have windows going up the spiral staircase, when you look out the window, you're going to see a view. When you go back up to the next level and you look out the window, you're going to see the same view. So a lot of times we think we're doing the same. For example, I could say the things that I learned that I wasn't going to put up with in terms of relationships and dismissal of self later would come up recently. Working with a particular business coach. And I was like, this feels familiar and I don't like it and I shouldn't be here. And you have moments where you're like, okay, but maybe. And so you start doubting until you get to a point where you're like, hang on, why am I doing this again? Okay, hold on, pause, start over, scratch. And then you redirect yourself and you break the box again. So it's a constant breaking. It's almost like a matryoshka, you know, the Russian dolls. So you take one and then another and then another and then another. I mean, and then someday the little doll is small enough that, I don't know, maybe we go on to the next plane of existence at that point.
I do believe that that's exactly what's happening, because as we heal, now our body says, okay, let's see if you've really healed. And so it tests you and it gives you a little bit more. And each time you heal a little bit that's bubbling up and you release it, it gets faster and easier, just like momentum in anything else. And so we might feel like we're trapped in a cycle, but if we're releasing a little bit and it's not as hard each time, that when it comes back, you go, oh, there's a little bit more. There's a little bit more in there that needs to be released. And so I love this analogy and I love this conversation. And while we're in the process of releasing a little bit of energy and sharing our message with our next commercial break, again, remember, your energy matters. So subscribe and like and join the Unlearn the Crap community. We'll be right back to complete this conversation.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like, it was almost instant. Like, I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. You know, it feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting? Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic on the BBM Global Network, Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
So one of the things that I'm always talking about is the fact that we are in exponential change. 100 years ago, we were we weren't driving cars. We were in horse and buggy, and now we're in driverless cars. We've put someone on the moon. We're sending satellites, and we've got a space station, and we've got cell phones and computers. And the futurists are talking about the fact that if the rate of change stays, we will see another 100 years of change within the next 10 years. And so this is either an amazing opportunity for those who seize it and understand that that rate of change has to happen within themselves as well. Or I'm so afraid of the people who are trying to go back to normal, who want to go back to the good old days, the way things used to be. And that is never going to happen. And so when we want to just arrive, when we get to a place where we're just trying to fit in and conform and make things stable and safe, then we are denying our own humanness and our own potential. And so I'm going to give myself as an example. I did an amazing healing journey, totally transformed my entire life, wrote a book, have this TV show, working with clients, helping them unlearn their own crap, and things are amazing. But I've hit a wall where I've realized that I'm now on my next stage of evolution.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about. So earlier I had mentioned how the thing about the mindful self-seduction is that we get to do this every single day, and every single day we are someone new. So I want you, and I just invite everybody to think about it this way. The person that you are today is very different from the person that you were yesterday or even maybe a minute ago, because now you've just had some new insight. You had a brain, expansion. Something has happened and it has changed you. And there's nothing wrong with that. We are beings who are meant to keep expanding continuously. We're meant to take over vastness, right? The vastness of the universe within ourselves, which means things are going to ebb and they're going to flow. And in the realm of the divine feminine, for example, which is my jam all day, every day, in the realm of the divine feminine, the energetic field of that frequency is a continual movement. It's almost like water. It's actually the perfect day to talk about this because the moon is full today. So it's the perfect idea of that connection of water moving through. And so allow yourself to move into that process. And so what we want to get really good at doing is remembering the boxes don't define us. We define who we are. We get to choose who we want to be. And very importantly, we get to choose who we do not want to be. And so every single day we get to show up. And if you wake up this morning and you're like, okay, today I am selling candy out of my house and it's amazing and I love it and makes the kiddies happy and blah, blah. Okay, great. And then if tomorrow you wake up and you're like, meh, I'm done, I'm ready for something else, then you're done and you're ready for something else. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to keep that evolution going. Matter of fact, this is one of the reasons I love working working one-on-one with people is because what I like to see is, and what I like to say is, we're here to move to your next level self. What is that next level self? Is she writing a book? Is she writing courses? Is she learning how to do makeup? Is she cutting hair? Is she leaving one job for the next? Is she going back into the corporate world? Whatever it is, there is no judgment. There is only expansion. And the thing about that is that the person that you get to know, this is your chance to know a different version of yourself every single day, is going to blow your mind. You're going to be in awe of her, because today you wake up and you're like, I'm choosing myself. And today you're like, okay, now I'm exploring this dream. And I understand that this is not the end all be all. So if you let go of the rigidity, let go of the idea that things have to be either or. Let go of the idea that it's this or nothing else. Let go of the idea that there is this one thing and you're going to hold on to it as hard as you possibly can, because if not, you're going to die and it's going to destroy you. Let go of that and be open to the possibility of fluid expansion and transformation. It's okay. You heard me say earlier, I was teaching, and I wasn't teaching, but I was working people for nutritional purposes, right? So I've been a yoga teacher, I've been a nutrition consultant, I'm a feminine embodiment mentor, and who knows, someday maybe that'll change too. And that's all right. I've been an actor. You want to let yourself move through life as life is moving you, and understand that beauty, the beautiful invitation of more is great. More is amazing. More is more of you.
Absolutely. One of the exercises that I always talk about with my clients is that we know how to create structure and values and boundaries and everything for a business. And we get to do it for ourselves. But we also have to constantly be looking at that and saying, is this still me? And if it is, does it still fit? Does it still feel good? Does it still resonate? Or is it time to take a look at that again? We wash our clothes daily. Everything about everything on the external gets to evolve and change daily, but we don't do that for ourselves. And that's one of the beauties of the things that you do, which I love.
No, I agree with you wholeheartedly. And it's that idea. I mean, I love that you said that we wash our clothes daily. Yeah, we get to turn the sheets over. You know what I mean? We get to do everything over again in our lives. And I think the beauty of that is that, unlike what we used to get told before of like, oh, who are you going to be when you grow up? And that was it. That was the end of it. No, you get to be so much more. And that's the kind of work that we can do together. So, if it's something that you are interested in, if you're like, I want to know more about this mindful self-seduction, reach out to me. I'm here. Info at Your Soulful Goddess. Your Soulful Goddess, meaning the name of the company. You as a human being, are a soulful goddess. And you can find me on Instagram at Your Soulful Goddess too. I've also got a podcast that Kathy was a guest in, and she was amazing. So if you want to listen to that, Mindfully Sovereign podcast on all the major platforms. And I don't know, this has just been such a delicious conversation, Kathy. Thank you.
No, thank you, because you and I talk about the same things, and we basically work with our clients and achieve the similar outcome, but you come at it from a whole different perspective. And that is the whole idea of what this show is about, is challenging the norms and seeing things in new eyes and new perspectives, and where we want to go with that. So I want to thank you so much for being a part of this conversation. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much.
And for those of you who are watching and you want to know more about Sapha, she is also a part of the Unlearn the Crap community. And so she is sharing her wisdom and her gifts within the community. And so I highly recommend that not only do you continue to subscribe and watch these channels as I bring you different thoughts and ideas and perspectives. And some of them are going to resonate and some of them are not. But I want you to know that what does resonate and what doesn't is information. It's information from you to you. So take that information and see what your inner soul and your inner heart are calling you to do. Because you do have a purpose and you do have a place and you do matter. And it is important that you forget the conformity and step into it. Do not get bowled over by this rate of change. Be a part of the movement, and you can only do that as your absolute best authentic self. So remember, continue to challenge everything so you can achieve anything. And welcome back to our Unlearn the Crap. And I look forward to seeing you in the community and on our next show. Until next time.
This has been Unlearn the Crap TV with your host, Kathy Baldwin. Tune in each week as Kathy challenges you to rethink everything you know about personal empowerment and societal structures. Thursdays, 4 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave TV network.